thank you for joining us for today's session of the Learning from Leaders webinar series hosted by the Yale Center for Customer Insights. Our speaker today will be Sthanunathan. Stan will be joining us from Unilever, where he has spent the last 8 years transforming the insights function as the Executive Vice President of Consumer and Market Insights. Prior to joining Unilever, Stan was the Vice President of Marketing Strategy and Insights for the Coca-Cola Company. An insights expert with over 30 years of experience, Stan has shared his insights across top business schools in the country, as well as co-authoring a book titled AI for Marketing and Product Innovation. Before we get started, I just want to remind everybody that Stan will speak for about 45 minutes. Please use the question and answer function to submit any questions, which you can do throughout the presentation, and then we'll take the last 15 minutes to address those questions. I'm also going to be adding the newsletter sign up into the chat here for anybody that's not on the YCCI newsletter, so you can stay appraised of the upcoming events that we have and the next Learning from Leaders sessions as well. All right, Stan, take it away.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Emily. Morning, afternoon, evening, depending on whichever part of the world you are in. What I'm going to do today is to provide a point of view. It doesn't necessarily mean that this is the point of view, but this is a point of view on how marketing has evolved over a period of time. And more importantly, what are the implications of that for the insight function going forward. All right. So a bit of context to Unilever, the company that I represent. We've been marketing pioneers since 1800. The reason why providing this context is important is because it'll give you an idea of how marketing has evolved, because Unilever has been doing marketing for almost as long as we've been doing marketing as we know it today. It started out with some print ads back in 1887 for Sunlight. So then, when the company found that, it was struggling to get good creative talent out there because it was not an established practice, they set up an internal ad agency, came with radio ads back in 1930s. The first television ad for Bird's Eye Peas was actually done way back in 1955. And then the color ad came up in 1969. And then the first soap opera was done then. And then, YouTube was back in 2006. So it has gone through a whole range of evolution over the last few years. The one thing that has remained constant over a time is that marketing has been the growth engines. It always was, and it will always be. It will be something that will drive revenue. So the importance of marketing is not something that is going to go away anytime soon. There's a lot of hype around marketing and how it has fundamentally changed over many decades. But let's not lose perspective of a few things. One is that marketing has remained same in quite a few fundamental areas. I've just tried to list down a few here. We still talk to people for whom brands is a very small part of their lives. Much as we would like to all believe that people's life begins and ends with brands, it's probably not true, because they have a lot of hopes, anxieties, aspirations in their life, and brands play a small part in those things. The other thing that we have noticed over the years is the brands that have strong brand power thrive over time. You might see brands that come in and go. They might have a meteoric rise, and they also have meteoric fall. But the ones that have strong equity, strong brand power, thrive consistently over time. The third one is a little bit more controversial. Especially we all would turn around and say that, oh, we are a lot more time pressured. But the truth is that people were and are time pressured. They were always time pressured. So if you go and talk to your parents or your grandparents, they will tell you that they were under tremendous time pressure in their early days. It's a relative idea. Time is a relative idea, and time pressure is most certainly a relative idea. And if you look at data, it always supports this next point that I'm making, which is that big brands get bigger. And Byron Sharp and Ehrenberg Bass Institutes have done a lot of work in this space, and it consistently proves that big brands get bigger. Mental and physical availability is still the key. It was always the key, and it will continue to be the key going forward. And penetration is still a key to driving growth in the marketplace. So these are some foundational things about marketing that have remained the same over decades. At the same time, while you can say that everything has changed, nothing has changed. But the only thing that has happened is that the speed of change has actually gotten much, much faster. So there is a little bit of acceleration of whatever changes one has seen over many decades. You see those things happening at an accelerated pace in the last 10 years. Just to put it in perspective, it took 68 years for airline industry to get to 50 million users. Auto industry, it took them 62 years. Telephone industry took 50 years, and so on and so forth. But if you look at Facebook, it took them just 3 years to get to 50 million users. And Pornhub, it took zero point 0.05 years to get to 50 million users. Obviously, it is catering to a different kind of an audience. So maybe there's a pent-up demand because of which it came. But the reality is things are getting accelerated at scale. But so what has actually changed in marketing? There are some changes that are happening. While the things that I talked about that have not changed is true, there are some things that have also changed in marketing. For example, one can very clearly see a migration from mass marketing to mass customization to hyper personalization. And this is a function of in what kind of industry you are in. If you're in the tech industry, hyper personalization is here and now. But if you're in the FMCG business, you're probably somewhere in between mass marketing and mass customization. And in some cases, hyper personalization is also happening. There is most certainly an exponential growth in connection points. What I mean by connection point is how you reach your consumers. That has actually gone through an exponential growth. Barriers to entry has diminished quite significantly. Today, anybody with an idea is in a position to actually get a product made and launch it. In the past, that used to be a really big task. And therefore, it used to be the territory of big companies to come up with new ideas. And they had moats, they had scale advantage, they had big factories. But those kind of barriers to entry are diminishing quite rapidly. Retailer power has increased over the years, and marketers are also increasingly becoming schizophrenic. So the patience to stay with a brand's architecture, the patience to stay with a packaging design, patience to stay with a distinctive brand asset over a consistently long period of time is actually becoming rarer and rarer. Marketers are becoming increasingly schizophrenic. They're more interested in launching new stuff, but there are few who actually have great visions about how brands are built, and those brands, guess what, they actually do quite well. And then product quality has gotten democratized. In the good old days, people with large factories, great quality control systems, great processes are the ones who could produce great quality product. But today, with technology being what it is, more and more people are able to produce good quality products. And therefore, that is not necessarily a big differentiator today, but brand is a big differentiator. So there are things that have changed. So in this world where some things have remained the same, which are truths in marketing which have withstood the test of time, and there are some things that one is seeing some changes, and those changes actually are accelerating. What do we do? So you hear a lot of words around purpose. How purpose-led marketing is going to be the new horizon. If truth be told, purpose led marketing is not anything dramatically new. It has been there from the time good marketing was created. I want to give you an example. Back in 1988, when Sunlight soap was launched in the UK, it was actually deeply rooted in purpose. The purpose was all around how do I make women's life a little bit better? Yeah. And that, and plus, it was rooted in naturalness, it was rooted in high quality, and so on and so forth. So it was not just the product. They also, they had this whole notion of prosperity sharing, which was a phrase that Lord Leverhulme created back in 1988. He said, if my people are going to be working in factories to make soaps for the world, I would rather provide them with great housing so that their overall quality of life is actually improved. So he coined this phrase called prosperity sharing, and he built a full township in Port Sunlight where people lived and worked. And there are a lot of things that happened over a period of time. It was not just once when he started the company, but he morphed the purpose of his company, all anchored in this principle of prosperity sharing to make the world a little bit better for those people who are working in the factory. So, purpose marketing is not necessarily new. While there is a lot of buzz today, it has been there, and all the good large companies who are large and sustainable today always started with some purpose at some point of time, which was a founder's purpose that stays true even today. So I just gave you a couple of examples from Unilever, but I'm sure a lot of companies have similar kind of things on which they are rooted in. Given all this, the impact on insights is likely to be quite significant. And I want to walk you through some of my point of view on what is going to make insights function successful going forward. I think this maniacal force and craft of data needs to be balanced with art of insights. Data is increasingly getting commoditized. Of course, we need to be masters in the craft of data to make sure that we can tame the data. But if that becomes a full time preoccupation, it's not a invalid preoccupation, but it can consume your time and you could soon reduce yourself to commodity. But what makes the function great is the art of insight, the art of telling people the so what and the now what. That is the one that is going to make the function great. So that is likely to be the one on which we need to focus a lot of time and effort going forward. Why do we need to do that? Because point of view will command a premium in the future. Telling the people, showing them the mirror, showing them what happened in the past, yes, it has got value because we have to learn from the past. But history also tells us that as a human race, we have never learned from our past. So it is good that we can tell people that this is what happened to your market share, this is what happened to your brand power. You can explain the past, but explaining the past is got limited use. But what we need to be able to do as a function is to inspire the business to create a future. And that will be done if we can provide a strong point of view. And I'll explain these things in a little bit more detail. And I'm happy to, in the question and answers, what steps we have taken to actually do these kind of things within Unilever. The other big seismic shift that is likely to happen is the whole notion of real time. Now is the time for real time. Everything is going to be done at double fast time. So in Unilever we have this internal mantra, which is how do I create double the impact in half the time and half the cost? Because we genuinely believe that nobody has the patience to wait for 8 to 10 weeks to get a study finding. So they want things ideally yesterday, but if not tomorrow. Yeah, that's the latest they are willing to wait. Um, this could be a little bit of a controversial remark. Benchmarks will be redefined. Our whole market research industry has been built on benchmarks which are based on longitudinal studies that have been done, number of studies that have been done, and everything is benchmarked against the past. In a world which is changing very rapidly, one has to challenge the validity of benchmarks, and sooner or later that is going to be really questioned at scale, and therefore we need to figure out what is it that we are going to measure ourselves against. But if you're going to be measuring ourselves against a database that is 10 years, that has got 10 years worth of studies done, it is probably not relevant because the first 5 years of those database might not reflect what is the current market reality. And in any case, so why benchmark it against that? The next fundamental redefinition of industry is going to be all around asking questions and getting answers will become less and less relevant in the years to come. Particularly, when you're looking at, things like a series battery of 5 point scales and so on, it is going to get challenged. It is going to get challenged because how often you actually take life decisions based on a 5 point scale. Ask yourself, this question, when you took big life decisions, whether it is the kind of university you want to go to, or the person you want to date, or the person you want to marry, did you administer a 5 point questionnaire? You took decision based on how your heart felt, and how your overall response to that individual was, or the situation was. Why ask consumers questions in 5 point scale when just because it is easy for them to respond, it doesn't mean that they are telling you the truth. The next point is all around, the insights function is going to have to needs to be in a situation where they can go and tell their internal business partners, I have the answers. What is your question? This is not an arrogant statement, but it is a statement that we should be in a position to be in, because the data is so abundant today that you can literally get answers to any question. And I have a simple challenge. If somebody comes and asks you a question, try and see if you can just go to Google and search for potential answers. And guess what? You'll be able to get answers to almost all the questions to an extent possible, but that is just doing simple Google search. But if you move to a higher order analytical skills, you would be able to answer most questions in life. Yeah. And again, I have some specific examples on what we can do for each of these things. The big watch out for the insight function is avoid becoming data zombies. That goes back to my very first point on craft of data. If you get single-mindedly focused on craft of data, you run the risk of becoming a data zombie. And once you become a data zombie, your ability to pull yourself away from that and tell compelling stories that will inspire and provoke people to drive transformational actions would be limited. So, how are we coping up with these changes within Unilever? The first and foremost is the ability to define insights sharply. You ask 20 people what is the definition of insight, you will get 20 definitions. So therein lies the first problem, because if an insight is staring at you in your face, depending on what definition you use, you will recognize it. But we have a simple but very cheeky definition of insights. What we say is anything that is retrospectively self-evident is an insight. Self-evident? No, because the whole world knows. But after I tell you that this is an insight, if you come back and tell me, duh, that's obvious, that's fine. But was it obvious before I told you this? And if you say no, then you know you have a big insight, because it looks obvious, but nobody thought of it. That's when you know that you have a great insight. So defining what an insight is actually quite critical. The second one is, set a compelling vision for the function, because if you don't have a compelling vision for the function, then you're not even sure what is the direction in which you want to go. At least in Unilever, our internal vision is to inspire and provoke to drive transformational action. Conspicuous by its absence is the word insight, because insights is a means to an end, but not an end in and of itself. So if you say that your job is to turn up and inspire and provoke people to drive transformational action, then you think about your job differently, and then how you transform the function to get you there would be quite different. The third belief that we have internally is outsource process, in-source thinking. This is again, something that makes a lot of people a little bit uncomfortable, because the moment you say that you outsource process, they'll say, "Oh, that's my day job." No, that's not your day job. If the day job is all about managing process, that is not necessarily something that gets the function the glory, or it gets the function the credit that it deserves. So the more we outsource process, the more bandwidth we have for actually enhancing thinking. And it is the thinking that helps us to provide us with a point of view, and it is a point of view that gets us a seat at the table. And I always tell people that if you don't have a seat at the table, you are probably on the menu. So you have to make sure that you provide a point of view and you're invited to the table, because people value your point of view. And doing that requires time. And to create time, you need to outsource process. Otherwise, we'll get caught in the process activity that will keep us busy for 8 to 10 hours a day, and we'll never have time to think. Move upstream as much as possible. Focus on futures, human and cultural insight, because the point of view is that help people to dream up a future, not necessarily use the past to predict the future. Because using the past to predict the future has a finite use, but it will tell you what the business could be if you perpetuate what you did in the past with a little bit of twist here and there. But that doesn't necessarily get you a really big picture world of possibilities. But if you go and tell people, if you remember, earlier on I said that brands are a small part of people's lives, but bulk of the time they are humans leading a day-to-day life. Their hopes, anxieties, aspirations. Understanding them provides us with great opportunities to find out what could be done to meet those issues and challenges that they face on a daily basis. And that's when focus on futures, human and cultural insight is going to be a big thing. And here is a simple one that we try to do internally. This is a chart from May of 2020. Just when COVID crisis hit the country in March, we started looking at what are the big things that are likely to shape how consumers behave in the marketplace. Not all of them are going to carry forward, but the ones that were identified were really helped the business to quickly pivot in terms of what needs to be done. The clean living was a trend that was identified. And we got into a business as a company which we were not into at all, which is the whole hand sanitizing business. We didn't have a single product in that category, but the company pivoted so quickly that they created a multi-$100 million business because this trend was identified, and we said, okay, this is going to be there for some time to come. And that, so there is a lot of things that can be done because we provided a perspective on future, a perspective on what human and cultural insights are likely to emerge, and therefore what should the business be doing. Less of predicting the future, more of creating them. And I think this is an area which will really put insights function at the center of the decision making conversation. Uh, most big businesses never created a product that was based on what their consumer told them. They had a point of view on the future. Whether if you ask people, would they drink a brown colored fizzy liquid which has got sugar in it? If you had asked them 130 years ago, even if you had given them a product to taste, they would have said, yuck, I wouldn't drink it for love or money. But then the rest is history. You have an iconic brand or brands in this case, whether it is Coke or Pepsi, which are globally sold, and it is a brown colored sugary liquid with fizz in it, which normal human taste would have said, no, I won't do it. And the same is true for, would you buy a phone without a keyboard? People would have said, are you kidding me? But the rest is history. Apple launched it. So therefore, it is not about predicting the future. It is about helping the business to create the future. That's what is going to give us the thing. Blend traditional and tech-enabled approaches. There is this fashion now to say that tech-enabled approaches are going to take over the world, but there is a role for traditional approach. There is a role for traditional approach that actually tells you certain things which a tech-enabled approach might or might not be able to do. So the whole art of blending tradition and tech-enabled approach is the one that is going to define who we are and what we are going to be known for going forward. So what we do in Unilever is, we fish where no man or woman has gone before. So we have screened close to 4,000 plus companies, piloted 250 plus methods, and we have scaled them 200. And of those 200, almost all of them were tools that were not developed for the research industry. These were tools, these were technologies which were repurposed to be applied for the insights industry. And they did replace some of the traditional methods, but there are some traditional methods that we hold on to very dearly. And the question is, how do you blend these things together to make it come alive? Let me give you an example. Well, I don't want to talk about this particular slide. Moving on. Yeah. Oops. No, I probably opened a slightly different version of the slide. So we as Unilever Ventures, we have invested in this company called Machine Vantage. So it is basically a sensory AI company. So it is, fragrance AI, taste AI. So all the five different sensors. It leverages the power of artificial intelligence to come up with areas that a normal traditional data analytics powered or marketing research questionnaire based technology will never be able to come up with. And this is something that has cut down the time required. It has cut down the number of days that it so not just the number of days, it also has cut down the money it costs, but it comes up with insight that people look at it and say, aha, I never thought of it that way. The example that I have here is, we took non-conscious influencers, mind drivers of consumers, what does the brand stand for, and we have actually been able to create product innovations at scale. The trick here is, once you come up with a new technology, fast follow and scale is the lowest risk option, because the temptation is to come up with a new technique, and then once it gets kind of rolled out, you move on to the next new technique. But pause. Can we make sure that whatever we have created, can that be scaled globally? Scale it globally, because that is the lowest risk option, and that's where the biggest benefit actually kicks in. Um, Living the consumer is absolutely mission critical. And in today's environment, going and doing home visits in consumers' houses is almost impossible, given all the social distancing requirements and travel restrictions and so on and so forth. But consumers are still there. Consumers are still consuming product. How do you live their life? How do you look at them with a lot of empathy? Is going to be the one that actually defines the insight professional. And we have to make sure that the whole notion of generating empathy becomes a company wide capability and not just an insight function capability. Insights function should facilitate this for the entire company, rather than necessarily just own it internally. So our here is a video from another technology that we had identified long back. We worked with a company called Discuss.io to actually see if we can do uh, online interviews at scale in a very, very cost effective way. And we started working with this company almost 5 years ago. Uh, Today, there are lots and lots of marketers within Unilever who, when they suddenly need a new inspiration and they need to talk to a consumer, they can actually go to their own computer, click a few criteria, and they can, find a consumer who meets that criteria anywhere between, 8 hours to within 48 hours. You'll be able to get the consumer on the screen, have a chat with this person, and you get inspired in terms of what you understand. And this is also powered by a whole lot of other technology in terms of how we can transcribe the thing, how we can analyze it, how we can do content analysis. It is redefining qualitative insights to some extent. That's how you actually start living the consumer value. And this brings about a cultural change. Here on this screen, what you see is our then CEO, Paul Polman, actually interacting with the consumer. And at the end of the whole interview, he turned around and said, damn, I thought I kind of knew consumers quite well, because I've been in brand marketing for my entire life. But what this lady told me was that I probably don't know the consumer as well as I thought I do. And that is a very humbling experience, and that makes people think about their life a little bit differently. So, the broad theme that I have here is that you have to adapt, and the time to adapt is now, because and it's not an optional conversation. We have to adapt, or we run the risk of perishing. One of the big adaptation that we did was what we call as the People Data Center, which is a productized automated delivery of insights at scale. So if you go and talk to any of the marketers within Unilever, they would all talk about what PDC is and what it can deliver. And we are, it helps you all the way from identifying trends, and also not only identifying trends in the marketplace, it will also help you to identify how trends migrate from one geography to another, and what trend originates in what kind of geography, how it flows. And it takes it all the way down to generation of concepts, evaluation of concepts, almost untouched by human hand, It also helps us to monitor any PR crisis that we might have, and it can tell you whether you should react to it or let it go. And in fact, this is a capability that has been deployed at scale with across 38 different locations within Unilever. And in fact, when the Insights 2020 work was done, the Harvard Business Review found this fascinating enough to ask us to write an article about the transformation of the Insight capability. And to a large extent, the article was based on what we created in the People Data Center. So the time to adapt is now. The time to act is now. Yeah, this is we are probably at a very critical juncture in the Insights function. The steps that we take today is going to shape who we stand for, what we stand for, and how we are looked at going forward. Uh, Thank you. And I'm open to any questions. I know I've taken about 35 minutes. Very happy to answer any questions or provide extra context and clarifications on any of the things that I've said. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan, very much. We do have a bunch of questions that have come through. And so we can start in the question and answer section over here. It has been said that 20 years ago, consumers were very engaged with FMCG, packaged goods, consumer staples brands. But today, it is technology brands that fascinate and engage consumers. Would you agree? And why do you think this is happening? And the third part of this question, is it possible that the brand building aspect of the FMCG brands needs to change to make them more important in consumers' lives?
Well, so thanks, Raju. That's a very a deep question. At the end of the day, if you look at why technology brands are fascinating for and engaging for consumers, it goes back to the point that I made earlier. What are the hopes, anxieties, and aspirations of people? And what products can actually meet those needs? And that is exactly what some of the technology brands did. And they did a very good job of it. One has to give it to them. So whether it is Facebook or Google or any other people, they help people and they help with some of the issues that people are facing at that point of time. Nobody ever said that I wanted a Google search engine, but people had a need to know more, and they provided a solution, and that's what resulted in those kind of brands becoming quite strong. At the same time, your second part of the question, would FMCG brands be able to do that at scale? Absolutely, they can. They can do that too. I'll just give you a little bit of context. Yeah, if you talk to any of the big FMCG companies, they will have similar numbers to the one that I'm going to quote. Roughly 3 to 3.5 billion people touch our brands every single day. Yeah, in Unilever. Yeah, and that's a large number. And I don't think daily active users for any of the tech companies would be in that magnitude. I'm sure Coke would have a similar number, P&G would have a similar number, Pepsi would have a similar number. They all would have similar large numbers. The question is, how do we actually leverage that? And that actually brings us to the whole notion of what is it that needs to change so that these 3.5 billion interactions that happen every single day is something that can be not necessarily monetized, but is something that can be transformed into something that adds value to people's lives. And that calls for a different approach to marketing, and that calls for a different approach to the way you generate insights about that interaction. It's not about the soap cleaning your skin or a laundry detergent washing your clothes better. It needs to go a little bit beyond that, and how we do that is going to be the biggest opportunity.
Great, thank you, Stan. I think this kind of ties in with that, this next question, which is from Sergio. What is the optimal blend of hard and soft skills that you see being needed now for an insights professional?
Optimal blend of hard and soft skills. Okay. I think suppose what you mean by hard skill is the knowledge of techniques and tools and data analytics and so on and so forth. Uh, to me, that's very important, but it is also table stakes. You can be a master in all that, but if you don't necessarily have the right soft skills, your ability to uh, travel the journey from the what to the so what to the now what, then having the best hard skill is not going to get you glory. So the way I look at it is, it's table stakes. Get yourself well equipped in that space, but start spending a lot of time in developing the soft skills so that you can help the business to migrate from the what to the so what to the now what.
And then on the end of that as well, our next question is from Kalindi. What should the ideal career path for insights professionals in this new fast changing world? What is really the future of CPG insights? Do we need more non-traditional insights and analytics experience to have a stronger future?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
Yes. What should the ideal career path for insights professionals be in this new fast changing world? We can kind of break it up. So if you want to do that one, I'll do the other
Yeah.
part.
Okay. So my thing is, my answer might sound a little bit old-fashioned, but I think having good, strong foundational skill is very important. So I would probably, it links back to the earlier question on hard and soft skills. I think when you're starting off in your career, just make sure that your hard skills foundation is really robust, because without that you're building a house of cards. It could collapse. But as you move up an organization, the importance of soft skill becomes much higher, because that's what is going to you're going to be remembered for soft skills. uh, but as you grow higher in the organization, so develop that. So the blend changes depending on where you are, but certainly I would start off by making sure you become masters uh, in the hard skills before you can even earn your right to start talking about soft skills.
And then the next component of the question is, what is really the future of CPG insights? Do we need non-traditional insights and analytics experience to have a stronger future?
No, as long as there are consumers, as long as there are brands, the role of insight is only going to become more and more important, especially with the competitive forces in marketplace right now. Insights will be important for a long, long time to come. It is what you do with the insights, is how you present insight, that is what is going to make the role of insights important or unimportant. If you are going to be a function that actually generates report cards to tell the business, to show the business the mirror, it's a valid role, but it is not a role that will be seen as really important, because that is a role that is likely to get automated in the years to come. But as I said earlier on in my presentation, there is always going to be a premium for point of view. So if you are in the business of insights, again, ask yourself, what is that point of view that I provided? The KPI that I would urge you to look at is, how many oh shit moment you've created for your internal business partners. And what I mean by that is, you said something and they looked at you and said, oh shit, never thought of it. How many of them have you created, for your business partners? The more you create, the more important your role gets over a period of time.
Great. The next question is from Laura. What is your perspective on the best focus areas for the insights team versus the customer experience function?
Well, the focus area for the business team, the insights team, it should be actually, for both of them, it should be around, how do I drive growth? How do I drive sustainable growth for the business? The insights team would be more around, the day after tomorrow and the month after, whereas the customer experience team would be more around the here and now, to make sure that people you're providing delightful experience. But the insights team is the one that is expected to provide good, robust, strategic answer, which will guide the direction of the business. So that's the way I kind of broadly differentiate the role of the two teams. Yeah.
Great. AJ has asked, do you have thoughts on how an insights department in a less marketing driven organization can demonstrate its value and gain a seat at the table?
Okay. So if you really need to get a seat at the table, we got to ask ourselves, what is the table discussing? The table is usually discussing, you know, hardcore business issues, challenges that they face on a daily basis. We got to ask ourselves a question: if we are a good, meaningful insight professional, we should get an insight of our own business partners first. What is keeping them awake at night? What are they discussing at that table, and what value can I add so that whatever they're discussing is considered, it becomes a richer conversation and they take better decision. And that's what should dictate what you should be doing. It doesn't matter whether you're in FMCG business or in non FMCG business. Insights are required in any function, in any company, and in any industry. The key is to understand what is being discussed at the table and what can I do to make that conversation richer. And that's when you earn the right to get a seat at the table.
Wonderful. We have a question from Ricardo, and he has noted that he's read your book. And he's asking, what would be an example of a fish where no man/woman has gone before?
Sorry, what is that?
The phrase "to fish where no man or woman has gone before."
Oh, okay, what would be the example where fish where no man has gone? I gave you an example of this company with whom we work called Machine Vantage. Yeah, that was an area which, as we were playing with them in the initial stages, we never thought we could go where we went. Where it started, let's say, 3 years ago when we started working with them, and where it is today, bears no resemblance to each other. It is a constant evolution that has happened. It started off as a technique for understanding metaphors, because metaphors are short handles for how people communicate. How can we learn metaphors that can be used in our communication and product innovation? But then from there, it moved on to sensory AI, and that is an area where we went to a place where no man has gone before. It was a little bit of a scary experience, but then we took a punt on that to the extent that we even invested in that company as Unilever Ventures, and that is clearly an area that we have created a unique capability. I can give you a few other examples of where we have the things that we have done where no man has gone before. Our people data center, in fact, more than a third of my team is employed in that people data center. 6 years ago, when we started the journey, we had zero people in that area. But today, if you talk to our C-suite people, they talk about it externally very regularly. That helped us to extend our internal stakeholder base way beyond marketing. Some of the capabilities that a people data center has got is actually streamed live into our shop floors where products are made, so that our factory supervisors and the workers can actually see firsthand for themselves how consumers talk about the quality and the experience that they have with our product. And that gives them some ideas on what they could do to make the product a little bit better. So those are kind of things that you could never bring. People talk about put consumer at the center of everything. Here we put consumers at the center of the manufacturing process where it happened. So our global head of supply chain talks about that in forums like Gartner's and so on. And that's a very unique capability. And did we think that we would be able to go into that space when we started PDC 6 years ago? No. Well, again, that's another example of things where where no man or woman has gone before.
Great. All right. We have, I think we're going to have time for maybe 2 more questions.
Yep.
So this next question is, for insights managers attending this session, what career advice would you have for them? Because there's a big urge these days to transform the function into a data science function.
Yeah. Yeah, I would never underestimate the importance of data science. Yeah, it is very important. It is critical. But again, that plays in this whole space of the what. Yeah, if you are an insight manager who wants to create a strong impact on the business, take the data science and talk about the so what and the now what. Uh, it is again, the data science makes your job easier so that you can actually focus on the so what and the now what. Stay curious, ask the question why very often. Yeah, that's the only way you'll be able to move up that ladder. The day you turn around and if your business partners come and tell you that you have come up with ideas that can have impact, that is when you know that you have actually landed as a big insights professional. And the more consistently you do, the faster you grow within an organization. So it's not about insights, it's about ideas and impact.
Great, Stan. Our last question today is from Seth. What has been the most retrospectively self-evident thing that Unilever has learned through the pandemic?
Uh, Retrospectively self-evident. I think if I go back to my chart, uh, e-commerce in for FMCG was a little bit of a not fully retrospectively self-evident, but I'm talking about mass marketing e-commerce products. They used to account for a very very small portion of the total sales. Bulk of the the traditional FMCG soaps and soups that we sell are usually sold through brick and mortar outlets. But we could clearly see that, listen, if we don't move quickly enough, that model is changing so dramatically. uh, if you don't move quickly enough, we are going to leave a huge chunk of the business on the table for somebody else to grab. And people got that message, and there's a big pivot that happened internally to move a lot of resources towards the e-commerce initiative, and that was powered by the fact that people's behaviors were fundamentally changing. And guess what? A vast majority of our incremental sales or all the growth that we've had have actually come from e-commerce. So that, I would say, that would be a really good retrospectively self-evident insight from COVID, where we spotted the emergence of e-commerce, not just for buying television and stuff like that, but also for soap and soup.